and welcome everyone. I am so sorry for my lateness this morning. So I want to start us off with some practice and meditation. And given that it is Mother's Day, and happy Mother's Day, everyone. And our mother had such a formative role in our development as human beings. I'm going to be inviting the mother energy into our practice this morning. The mother energy in the sense of could be our birth mother, but also the mothers that have guided us and raised us in various ways as we went through life. And some of those mothers may have been friends and elders in our life, female elders, and also the or gender not being in really a part, the ones who mothered us, as well as our Mother Earth. And so here in the beginning of our day and of our practice together, I just want to bring that energy into the room, into your rooms, wherever in your homes, into my outdoor room here. Just bringing that mother energy in. And it's going to be important in our practice today because we're going to be working with the parts of ourselves that are harder to love. And so starting with that mother energy can really help us to work into the place of loving those parts. So I ask you now to turn your seat a little bit away from the screen, but keeping it in your visual, in visual touch, and that you can glance at it. We're going to put on gallery view here. Or you can keep speaker view, but just for a moment, gallery view to connect to Sangha. I'm going to keep us on gallery view while I'm practicing. So I can just know you were there as refuge and Sangha. And so we'll begin this morning with our refuge prayer. If you could bring that up for us, Amanda. You bring up that refuge prayer for us, Amanda. Yeah. There we go. Thank you. Great. Anje chedan sochi chonam la changchu bardu dani chapsu chi Agi chen so pe sonam ching. Rola penche sanje drupa. Sanje chudan sochi chonam Changshu bardu dani chamsu Aki jinso jipe sonam Rola penche sanje drupa. Now bringing into the space in front of you, the sky in front of you, the eternal figures, just those in your life who have guided and supported you, starting with your birth mother, who gave us our body, and mother like guides and teachers, and perhaps those also beyond the flesh, Tara, or Vajrayogini, Naratnya, and the lineage of mother-like elders in your own life who cared for you. And just in a way that is spontaneous, seeing who shows up, out planning, relaxing that thinking mind, and just letting these women or women like mother like ones appear for you. Their bodies radiant with the natural wisdom coming from their true nature, radiant with unconditional love. Just allowing yourself to receive that radiant energy of wisdom and love into your own body, like basking in the rays of the sun. Receiving this radiance into your body, every cell in the body. And receiving this radiance into your subtle body, to your energy body, as those warm rays meet the energy body, feeling it melt and soften. And receiving into the parts of yourself that are mm, tightly held or defended. Allowing all those parts to be warmed and seen just as they are. And receiving into the parts of the self or the body, the nervous system that are vigilant, fearful, letting those parts be warmed by this loving radiance, permeated and loved just as they are. And seeing what else is there this morning, whatever you brought with you to the cushion. Needs attention or seeing what's there. And parts of you that are struggling, feel struggle or frustration. Maybe something you've been working with this week or this month, this year, maybe a whole life. What's there this morning? Allowing that to be held in this radiant warmth of love from the mother field. And sensing into the great mother, the great mother earth, and her energy, her warmth, her love, her care for us as her children. She's right outside whatever structure you're in right now, in your home, the place where you are. Right outside, the trees, the sky, the birds, this great mother, the earth, that ground below, radiating the mother energy. And calling us home. Reminding us that we belong. And sensing down deep into our psyche, not just what is seen, but what is unseen. The deep drivers. The Buddha would say ignorance, desire, and greed. Mhm. Psychology might say the shadow. Jung would say the shadow. The unconscious. These parts of our psyche that are deep down, rooted in our history, in our traumas, the mystery, inviting that radiance, field of love into that shadow, warm and soften, bringing some light and care. Like the sun dawning. It might be that as we're bringing that warm radiance there, that things arise that we weren't aware of that are here this morning. And as those arise, just letting those be held in unconditional love. Letting that shadow be loved just as it is. And inviting all these parts, all these facets of your diamond of being human to come along and practice with you. Now witnessed by our mother field moving into practice of resting. Taking a seat in our mother awareness. Source, the ground of all. And you may want to open your eyes just a little or a little more slowly so that you can gaze through the eyes of your mother awareness. The loving awareness. With ears open, breath open. Energy open. Heart open. Mind open. Letting everything be just as it is. Just here. Just now. Just this. And when you're seeking a place to rest, just coming back again to this loving awareness, this gaze on the present moment. At home in your loving awareness. Now at your own pace, no hurry. No hurry. When you're ready, just moving the fingers, the toes. And please join me if you'd like to stand. Standing with our feet about hip distance apart. Just inhaling the arms up on an in-breath and exhaling down slowly on an out-breath. Slow, deep, full out-breath. Inhaling up. Exhaling down. Inhaling up and exhaling down. And we're just going to keep that rhythm of inhaling and big movements on the inhale, and you can change the movements. Maybe going to the side and exhaling down to a side. But staying with the in-breath, the big movement up, and the exhale, the movement down. Just letting your breath take over and move you. Maybe you want to get the legs involved, lifting a leg on the in-breath, lowering it on the out-breath. And moving into a hatruka shake. Shake is shaking the arms and the legs, the feet, the torso, the belly, the face, the voice, shaking all over. And coming back to seated. So this morning, I'd like to share a bit or reflect a bit with you about befriending parts of ourselves that are harder to befriend. And so, just a little history. Um, like many of you, perhaps, some of you at least, when I was first studying the Buddha Dharma, mm, back in my 20s, first encountering the teachings of Buddhism, one of the things that drew me to those teachings was the promise of being a better person. And I think that is one of the gems that the Buddhist tradition holds, and many other religious traditions hold. This possibility to evolve and to grow into a kinder and wiser person. Um, and I remember back in those days that one of my favorite um, books was the Dhammapada. It was this a book that I think I'd found when I was about 15 or 16 years old in the library of the Nyingma Center in Berkeley. It was a red book, and a red cover, the Dhammapada. And I remember opening it and being instantly drawn in and delighted that it was poetry. It was like verses. And and many of those verses were about how to tame our difficult emotions, difficult parts, and especially the releasing or the taming of desire, greed, um, and aversion, its opposite, the tendency that we have to be angry, irritated, um, averse. Um, and there was a lot in there about the desire and the aversion and the ignorance, even underneath that, and how those cause a cycle of suffering. And that very much rang true for me, and still does, still does. I see the deep wisdom in that from the Buddhist teachings, that suffering doesn't come to us from the outside, that suffering begins with the seed of our own aversion, our own anger, our own ignorance, and our greed and desire, our clinging, our grasping, how we want things to be versus how they are. This trouble we have in accepting things as they are. So deep wisdom in that, deep teaching in that. But as I went along the path and got more deeply into the practice in my 20s and 30s, um, like many of you, whenever that happened for you, maybe it wasn't the 20s and 30s, but 30s and 40s, 40s and 50s, whenever it happened for you. And of course, we begin to think, well, if the anger and the greed are causing, and these desire are causing our suffering, those must be the boogeymen of our practice, the ones that we need to excise from our experience, because these are the troublemakers of our spiritual life. These are the troublemakers who are causing us to feel our suffering. So the very aversion that we have for everything in our life, we turned it towards our difficult parts. We turn it towards the difficult parts. And we start being averse to the parts of ourself that we see as causing the problem. So we pile aversion on top of our greed, and we put the greed into enlightenment, and the greed into our wish to be the better person, our greed into our wish for the peaceful state. So we think we're still uprooting, or we think we're moving towards uprooting, but we're actually adding on a layer of aversion for the parts of ourselves that we want to excise, and attachment to this idea of a peaceful, perfect self. So that is a phase, I think, that we go through. Maybe we have to go through as practitioners, um, until we slowly start to come out the other side and realize that there is another way. And that other way is not this way of aversion for the parts that we don't like in ourselves. The way is much longer and stronger and deeper than that. That way is the way of of love. And so at some point we may come across that. And it might be that we come across it in a teaching. It might be that we come across it ourselves. We stumble on it in work that we're doing on our own story or in our own trauma. Um, I think of a pivotal moment for myself being um, a combination of things. And one was I was in a teaching at Wonderwell. I was giving a teaching at Wonderwell early on, fairly early on in Wonderwell's life, maybe within the first five years of Wonderwell's existence. And um, I was giving a teaching on something. I don't even remember what it was. It was in a retreat, and it was a silent retreat. And after the retreat, someone put a note on the board, and the note was for me, and it was from someone in the Sangha who is a psychotherapist. And the note said, um, that teaching really triggered me. That teaching really triggered me. He said, there's a part in myself that feels unseen by you, um, unacknowledged, and even demonized by you. And of course, as a teacher, that's like it feels harsh when you get that, like a note like that. We get all kinds of feedback in our lives as teachers. And um, I thought, wow, this is somebody that, I know is very knowledgeable, very thoughtful, and also a therapist who's done a lot of work on himself and supports other people in the work on themselves. I did not dismiss this note. I was like, what did I say? What was it? I need to know. I need to know. So after the retreat, because we were in silence, so I appreciated the note. I said, thank you for the note, but it's silence, so we don't do a lot of writing or talking in our silent retreats. And at the end, I found him and I took him aside and I said, what was that about? He said, you used this language. It was a phrase where you said something about, uh, these wounded parts or the I think I was talking about anger. And I was saying that anger, how much trouble anger causes in our life and how it undermines the very virtuous, seeds that we're trying to develop and grow. I think in some ways, of course, I do believe that. I still believe that in some ways, but I didn't. I hadn't no caveat there. Just anger. We need to work on our anger and get rid of our anger, reduce our anger. Something about that. And he said, that's not what my angry part needs. He says, there's a part of me that is so angry at the world because of what happened to me when I was a child. And that part doesn't need to be told that it is not a good part. It doesn't need that. That makes it more angry. He said, what it needs is love. What it needs is my loving attention. It needs to be accepted as it is because it's there for a reason. That anger is there for a reason. Something happened to me and I needed to protect myself. And so and I thought about it, that was really the first, I felt like that was a crack in my whole life as a Dharma teacher. It was like a crack that I had to get in that crack and understand what is going on there. It changed my life. That changed my teaching life and my practice life in some ways. Just that that feedback from that therapist. And what happened is I started to think about that in relationship to my own deeper parts and darker parts, and how I have developed that relationship and where I am in that relationship. And I realized that he's right, that the more we demonize, label, exile the parts in ourselves that are wounded, that our anger, our fear, it comes out of this impulse in the human organism to protect itself and to care for itself. That's a good impulse. That's not a bad impulse. That's a really good impulse. And that the more we exile and demonize those parts of the self that feel those feelings, the more they go down into hiding. And they don't leave us alone, actually. They stay down there and they fester and they pop up when we don't expect them and they act out. So that moment put me on this um, journey, on a journey of really looking deeper at what it is that we mean when we say anger, or when we say fear, or when we say envy, or uh, greed. These words that we hear in the Buddhist teachings as poisonous, right, to our practice, or poisonous to our awakening, even. And to get deeper with what those are, and how we can sanely and kindly allow those parts um, not to um, not to disappear, but rather to feel safe, to become present, so that we can really work on those parts. And to work on those parts, I've come to believe now, isn't about getting rid of them. It's about loving them, and it's about accepting them. And that when they feel loved and when they feel accepted, they relax. So I got to work on that even this morning. One of the things that I most fear about myself, I'm fairly responsible, but once in a while, like once every couple of years, and this was one of those moments, I miss something, like I did this morning. It's very early here, it's 6 in the morning, and I missed setting my alarm. And so I woke up late and but I came a little late. And so I had shame with me. I could feel the shame with me when I came. So I had something right away to work on. And I could bring the shame part along and work on loving that shame part. That part that is the little girl that so wants to please, always, and that doesn't always make it. And then when she doesn't make it, there's a tumbling into feelings of uh, shame and sadness, and also, the inadequacy. Oh, I'm inadequate, right? So then loving that up, and asking that to be present, asking that to be front and center in the practice, not a peripheral, not I'm going to put that in a box, I'm going to put this over here. but bringing that front and center to be cherished and to be cared for and to be uh, accepted. And oddly, when we do that, so you had a part that you brought in this morning when we were doing the meditation, some parts of the part of you that is fearful, the part of you that is struggling. So those parts, we tend to, when we're practicing, to put them in a box. Like that has to go over here while I'm practicing. But actually, the skillful way, I now think, I now believe, is to bring it front and center. Because when we get skillful, when we get good at doing that, when we love it into the fold of our practice, it relaxes. It actually leaves us alone. It doesn't have to knock on the door so hard because we're giving it the attention that it needs in that present moment. And we can bring that part along to practice with us. So take the part that you worked with this morning and imagine bringing that along, like right into your lap, like actually into your physical lap. And maybe that part has a form. Dick Schwartz, who's the teacher of internal family systems, the model of psychology that works with parts, encourages his clients and the people that he trains to do internal family systems to envision the part in a form, like as to let it take an actual form and not to force that, but to see what form it wants to take. So what form does your anger take? Um, Lately, mine has been a wrathful goddess, kind of like Truma. Truma is the wrathful goddess in Chu. So lately, my my angry part looks like that. She's got wild hair and she's got her fangs bared and she's dancing and she's full of energy. So that part. Um, or there's a part of me that is working on healing from uh, a trauma a few years ago, 5 years ago, related to the separating of my from my husband. And she's a little girl, and she's about 3 years old, and so that's another part that I work with. And initially when I first heard about giving the parts form, this was about the time. This is still, after having that kind of awakening through that note on the bulletin board from the psychotherapist. Um, yeah, I started to explore my relationship to my darker parts and my shadow parts and really intensely during that period, and eventually stumbled on Dick Schwartz's work. And when I first heard about his encouragement to give the parts form, like a shape or a form. Initially, I resisted it because I thought, but that's reifying. Reifying means making more solid, making more real. And in our Buddhist practice, we're all about deconstruction and finding the emptiness and letting go. And it's like, but that's reifying. And then as I started to do the work, I thought, but I've got to try it. I've got to see, does this really work? When I started to do the work, I discovered it's very much like the practices that we do in Buddhism of visualization, and where, yeah, we are reifying. So yes, we are making more, we are giving form, and we're giving form just like we do in tantric practice in order to have a deeper, fuller, and more awake relationship with those parts. And when I gave them form, suddenly I had permission to have a really loving relationship with them. It's hard to love something that has no form, but you give it a form and it makes it easier to love. Just like when we're working with deity practice, when you give the Buddha a form, it makes it easier to have the relationship with the Buddha. So we're doing that with parts. So I noticed, yeah, that when we give those parts a form, we can really have them in our lap when we're practicing. And it might be that it's just we just touch into it. It's not like we stay with it for the whole practice, but we touch into it. Like I'm going to put my fearful part in the lap and just come along and meditate with me. Just come along and be here with me, meditate with me, practice with me, please. Breathe with me, sky gaze with me, and wake up with me. So it's interesting when we do that, when we give the part that kind of permission to be present, what happens? That part is no longer fighting with us, or we're no longer fighting with it, but that part becomes an ally. And and the interesting thing about the parts is they want to wake up just as much as we do, we being our core self. We want to wake up, but the parts want to wake up just as much as we do. And so inviting them to be present like that gives them access to the same freedom that our higher, we might say our executive functioning self knows that we want to partake of. Those parts want the freedom too, but they can't find that freedom if we're leaving them behind or we're putting them in a box, putting them on the shelf. They have to be loved into the fold. And so in some ways now that's how I see practice. The practice, the deepest practices of non-duality, the practice of nature of mind, the practices of awareness, are practices of opening wide enough to love everything into the fold, to make everything a part of the practice without excluding any any parts of ourself as not good enough to be there. Yeah, so those are just some reflections on I think I titled it Sympathy for the Devil, love for the parts of ourselves that are difficult to love, the parts of ourselves that are darker or more shadowed, and um, and setting them on the path to freedom. And I want to open it now to just hearing from you what the practice was like, the meditation was like for you this morning, and anything that you want to bring in with regard to comment on that paradigm, that way of practice, and then also to challenge, like if you're like, no, I don't think so. I want to hear that. I'm just sharing my experience. And so good to see you. I've got myself on the gallery view and so feel free to raise hand. So what is it like to practice with those parts?
And
Hi, Lama Willa. This is not Anne. This is Jan Cook. We're together. Thank you so much for, first of all, your honesty. All I can see is I can't see Lama Willa anymore. Let me put you on gallery view. This morning, it's Mother's Day, and I have I have three sons, one of whom came out of my body, and I lived with him for 9 months with him inside of me. And I think that this is a particular important relationship, that we are that connected. And so I was anticipating how he was going to deal with calling me and, being in communication with me. And this morning in this meditation, I actually did get a call from him, and he was tentative, and it didn't work for me to talk to him because I was coming on this session. So we tried to set up something for later, and there was just this whole tentative quality, and it was enough to trigger me. So in the meditation, and mostly not so much in the meditation, because in the meditation I started to go to sleep. That's how, that is an aversion pattern that I see when I'm trying to do this important work to be with parts and love them. That one of the ways I go is to sleep. So I'd love for you to comment on that. But what happened when you started talking was I remembered how I was as a little girl playing with my dolls and being their mother. And there was a particular quality. I had a lot going on in my early childhood. And so playing with my dolls was this place of peace, of caring for them, like I wanted to be cared for. And I just started remembering that and honoring that peace, that being who tries to deal with my own fear and anxiety through taking care of somebody else. And so that along with that comes a particular expectation of that other person to be a particular way, not, like my dolls were, who didn't talk, who weren't, they just went along with my ritual. And all of a sudden, I just flipped over to have a lot of compassion for my son, but also for me. So thank you. And also thank you for sharing about your own process. It really helps me a lot. So
Thank you. Thank you, Jan. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, so there's this interesting tendency we can have when our own needs aren't met to try to meet the needs of others in the way that we wish our needs had been met. And that's what I hear you saying, what you were doing with your dolls, which is a skillful way. As a child, you were skillful in wanting to find a way to explore how you needed to be cared for but weren't being cared for, and then what it would look like to be cared for. Now, then the next step, which is really what our rest of our lives are like, and it's really what the Dharma is about, is we need to become the great mother for ourselves. We seek the mothering outside ourselves, which is okay. We need that, actually. We need to seek the mothering in this life. But we also, the part that we often don't see about the Dharma, actually, and about our own practices, humans, to evolve and grow fully into our potential, is we have to become mothers to ourselves and love up the parts of ourselves that didn't get the loving as a child. And in some ways, that is what we are doing. We are becoming our own benefactor in the practice of the Dharma. That is what we are doing. So learning to do that, moving into the space of becoming a great mother for ourselves is the process that we're in as practitioners. And that takes a lot of attention. It takes a daily practice of loving up the parts of ourselves, especially that are difficult to love, as a daily practice, not as something that we do once in a while, but something that we do when we sit down, yeah, to practice. Raylan, yeah.
Thank you, Lama Willa. Thank you for waking up. And I just appreciate your honesty. And I thought the same thing about giving the part a form, because I was like, wait a minute, like I thought isn't that reifying it? So I appreciate the clarification around that. And the part that I was exploring was there's this part of me that at times it's really challenging to see my husband as he is, and he's like this bodhisattva for me. Like he's just this generous human, and I can watch it, and I've been curious about it. I can watch it when it's happening, but I haven't really like sat down and tended to it like I did today. And so being with it, and what it was revealing was just remembering just parts of my own upbringing where like my mother at times, I think she would go into overwhelm where there was this very disassociation, and I'd be in front of her and she just really couldn't see me. Like I was just not there. She just didn't have the capacity. And so there was tending to my part and seeing my part, and then also a deepening into compassion towards my mom, like trusting that there was this quality in her, that there was this willingness that wanted to see me, but there was just something there that she couldn't, in a relative sense. But it was just like this knowing, I guess, and connecting with that. And then there's also this part of me that was like starting to like caretake her, and I was like, no, I'm going to give this part of me my loving awareness, and then trust that there was this other mother awareness also holding her, this greater mother awareness. I didn't have to kind of like caretake. So I appreciate the practice today. Thank you.
Thank you, Raylan. Hey, Daypal.
Hi, Lama Willa. So I was just thinking, since there was so much honesty, I show myself here sick when I'm very happy
I'm
to be here.
sorry.
And yeah, so I didn't put my video on, but I was just hearing all your openness, so, and working with all the parts when being a little bit down is good, is a good work. But what I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that you are sharing your process so openly, because I saw in myself, I'm just starting since kind of 3 years when really kind of long COVID hit and things started to fall apart in many different ways. I started to see how much actually self-hatred was still there, exactly through these ideas that certain parts should not be there, right? To kind of a misunderstanding of, or exactly like you described your process of certain teachings where actually that should just not be there. And then this constant self-critique that can come with that. And then to learn also to love that self-critic mind, to also give that, to say, okay, that is also a part of that wanted to train, that also had some some purpose there. But it's for me, it's so many layers now that I've started to discover everything that needs some love and needs some attention, actually, in a more loving way and not in a aversion way. And I feel I'm very at the beginning of discovering all these layers. So I'm appreciating so much your support in that, and your sharing in that, and your process in that, and also the practices in that. So thank you. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, J. Paul. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you feel better soon. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's Lauren.
Thank you, Lama Willa. That was such a wonderful teaching. And what I have been struggling with, not just with working with my own demons, but also in the world we're living in, trying to extend out compassion and love for those who are doing evil or thinking of doing evil. Sending out love and compassion to those people is just so really, really challenging for me, but I want to be able to do that. And I am going to take from your teaching today about trying to reify certain entities and people and things that are happening and see if that won't help me be able to give some love to something that's so very hard to do, to give love to.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, it's interesting when we start working with that impulse to love our parts into freedom, to love them into freedom, to make that the doorway for their evolution, those parts of ourselves. We see that we see the world differently, that the people that are most difficult are lacking that process. I mean, they're clearly lacking that process. And the parts are acting out, and they act out strongly. They act out on an international level. The parts are acting out on an international level because they haven't been loved into the fold. So they are out of control. And it does help you see, like, okay, this is how things how things work. And if only more people could have that courage to slow down and go deeper with those parts and love them, so that they're not seeking something from the outside, but that's not the world we live in. And maybe one day it will be. I'm an optimist, so I always think maybe one day it will be, one person at a time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Hi, Charlie.
Hi, thank you. A couple of weeks ago, I have a teacher, Kenmo Droma from Vajradakini Nunnery in Portland. And she suggested that I should try giving, because I'm working with trying to have an open, loving heart. And she suggested that I should give my benefits and love to the people who are in hell forever, and try and offer them just a little moment, a little opening to get a hold of the Dharma and work their way out. And that's partly why when I saw your teaching for today, I would go, whoa, I think Kimmo wants me to do that too. And but as I've been working with that, I started realizing that really, in a way, this is a hell world that we are all kind of working our way through to different degrees. And So that's, I don't know, it has really helped me open up to keep giving that loving to the people in hell.
Mm, mm. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I think, we are in all the realms are right here. They're not outside, up there, down there. All the six realms are here now in this psyche and also in this world. You can see those realms present there. Yeah. And so, yeah, it w- yeah, when I think about the realms that way, when I think about hell and heaven, and the pure realms and the hungry ghost realm and the animal realm, all of those realms are in this psyche right here. It means we can purify the realms. We have that possibility of purifying the realms by just going inside and starting to really explore and get intimate with all of those parts, because all of those parts have all the realms in them. All the realms are there. All the realms are there. So and the realms, if we want to think of the realms more externally, the more compassion we start developing for these realms, the more compassion we can have for the realms out there. So the getting intimate with our own six realms is a doorway into getting intimate with those realms out there, so to speak. With getting intimate with the hungry ghosts out there and with the hell beings out there and with the heavenly bodies out there and with the demigods out there and so forth, metaphorically speaking, that to get intimate with those parts of ourselves helps us a lot with compassion, because we tend to have trouble having compassion for those that are embodying the parts that we have exiled in ourselves. That is hard for us to do. So it's all connected. Yeah, it's all connected. Our practice, the practice that we're doing in our own deep realms is the practice that will help us love others too. Yeah. And be patient with others too. Yeah. Steve, hi there.
Hi there. How are
Are you
you?
on the West Coast or the East Coast?
West Coast.
Okay.
I came back 18 months ago for family emergency and got stuck here. So I'm at the Land of Medicine Buddha. I work as the maintenance manager there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh,
So that ties into the practice this morning, the meditation. I have a to-do list of about 800 things, and I find it's encroached on my practice so much that my meditation is not as simple and peaceful as I've had before, and I tend to push aside parts of myself because of that. So anyway, today I'm only here for another 2.5 months, and then I'm traveling again. But I I found in myself a tendency, because I'm so busy, that I'm putting off my enjoyment of peaceful times for another 2.5 months. It's like, it'll come later. instead of bringing it into my daily life now, I'm just kind of entangled and enthralled with the hectic demands on me. So I just wanted to share that.
Oh, thank you, Steve. And not to put another demand on you, but um y- you are holding a lot, and to hold a lot means giving that 15 minutes to yourself in the morning, maybe just 15 minutes, 20 minutes, to be completely just with yourself, you know? That will make your whole day go differently. So you know that. I don't have to tell you that, but sometimes you have to hear it from someone
I
else
do.
that,
I
you
do
know,
need to
you're
hear it.
such a giver. You're such a giver, but you need to fill your cup. You need to fill your cup. That that's so important. And everyone will know you're filling your cup.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nice to see you. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we're at time. Yeah. So we're a little over. It's all right. I went over because of our my my coming late. And so thank you for those of you that could stay. It's so good to see everyone. And those of you even who aren't on screen, so happy to have you here. And please join us again soon. Thank you. And we're going to end today with a dedication of the merit, and just this dedication is the intention to pay forward our practice and our reflection, to pay forward that mother energy, that loving awareness for the benefit of all beings, and also to aspire that our work on our parts and our shadow, that our love for, our sympathy for the devil within, our sympathy for ourselves, our love for the darker parts is also a love for those darker parts in this complicated and challenging world. And may our work on those pay forward for the benefit of that world. Thank you. Sangchu Sancho Rinpoche Ma Che Panam Che Jorchi Che Panyam Par Me Payam Hong Ne Hong Du Hao Shong. May the pure, brilliant sun of bodhicitta dawn in each and every heart and mind, dispelling the darkness of suffering and confusion, unstoppably until all are fully illumined and awakened. Thank you, everyone, and happy Mother's Day. I hope you have a good rest of your day.